Today I want to begin sharing a series of messages with you that I'm calling Ancient Wisdom, Modern Lives. So much of what we deal with in life, the things that trigger us, the things that are problematic for us, the things that frighten us, that worry us, that bring us joy, that bring us sadness, are the same kinds of things that our ancestors and their ancestors and their ancestors all dealt with. And what's different, I think, is the mind and heart that we bring into the experiences that we personally and individually are having. We live in a world that I think is filled with ever-growing complexity and tremendous rate of change that sometimes it can feel a little difficult, I think, to keep up with it. And yet we can look into ancient teachings and wisdom to help us navigate these very modern kinds of situations we may find ourselves in. And the test of these teachings, I think, is how much they still work today. How much they still work today. There is a whole book in the Old Testament of the Bible called Proverbs. And Proverbs are meant to be common, everyday kinds of ideas expressed in a very clear and simple way. Ideas that are meant to convey basic common wisdom. Ideas that we can use to kind of navigate the stream of our lives. And in the book of Proverbs, there's a whole array of them. And I want to share with you three that are among my favorite Proverbs. I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll try to unpack them a little bit and share what I think they mean that is applicable to us today. The first is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. You can't get much more vivid in imagery than that, can you? A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. In Proverbs 13:20, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And you know, as I share these, we chuckle a little bit, right? But think about how long ago these were written, how long ago these ideas were being expressed with the intention, I believe, to help people navigate their life in a better way, just as we are leaning into them today. So the first one, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. There are several key words and phrases in that proverb. The first, I would say, is the very word trust. The very word trust. In a spiritual context, trust is about surrendering to a higher power. It's about believing in and knowing that there is a higher power, and then a willingness to surrender into that. In unity, we recognize that that higher power is called by many different names and can truly be found in any of the world's spiritual traditions and religions, that Christianity is not the only one and not the only way. Trust as a spiritual practice is a surrendering into, a believing in this higher power and the willingness to surrender into it. It's the idea of faith beyond proof. So trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In unity, and I think perhaps true also in the science of mind, which I think is like a cousin teaching to unity, very, very similar roots for both of the teachings and similar languaging and similar practices. We don't use the word Lord very much. We don't use the word Lord very much, but it's used here in this proverb. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. We understand the word Lord in metaphysics to mean law, spiritual law. So when we look at this proverb, we are not looking at it from the idea of trusting in a person, but trusting in spiritual principle, trusting in spiritual law, trusting in spiritual teaching, rather than being solely guided by the mind. Trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. What does it mean? What does it convey to you? What does it feel like when you hear the words with all your heart? Everything. Your whole being, right? With your whole heart, your whole being, every thought, every aspect of your being, to lean into, to surrender into divine principles, spiritual law, without reservation, we might say, right? With all your heart. When you give your heart to someone, you are giving it with how? Without condition, right? Without reservation, wholeheartedly and completely, aligning every aspect of our being with it. I think, at least I'll confess, I think that this is true for me. It's easier for me to trust with all my heart. The harder part for me is the lean not on your own understanding. And by your chuckling, I suspect maybe some of you relate to that as well, that maybe the using your whole heart, to trust with your whole heart is easier for you than to lean not on your own understanding. And what it's referring to there, how we look at that metaphysically, is that we're not to rely exclusively on the gray matter. We're not to rely exclusively on our minds. And yet, for most of us, we grew up in an education system that, for all of its potential flaws, there's also tremendous value and good in our education system. But it tends to do what? It tends to focus on the mind, right? On the mind. This proverb, in its wisdom, is saying, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, is suggesting that we are not to just rely on our mind, that we are to value both. It's not an either or, it's a both and. It's a both and. So I think this proverb is inviting us to find that exquisite balance where we surrender, where we trust with faith in divine principle. We do that wholeheartedly to the very best of our ability, and we watch how much we engage the mind. We keep it in balance. Does that make sense? We keep it in balance. We keep it in balance. A way that we could practice this in addition to our meditation practice, a way we can practice this is to reflect on a decision that maybe you have to make in your life right now. Maybe there's something up for you that is an important decision you have to make. Maybe it has to do with health. Maybe it has to do with job. Maybe it has to do with money. Maybe it has to do with a significant change that's before you. Where can you lean less on your own understanding around that and lean more into trusting divine guidance? Holding that question, where can I lean less on my own understanding and trust divine guidance more? Just taking that into quiet on a consistent basis for a short period of time can open you up, I believe, to your own inner wisdom. And you may be very surprised at what insight or answer or guidance comes forth. The second proverb that I shared with you as one of my favorites, in part because it's so vivid in imagery. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. A cheerful heart is good medicine. Can you get a sense of what that looks like? Have you been around people who just seem to have this innate joy about them? It exudes from their eyes. And I'm not talking about superficial, lighthearted Pollyannish. I'm talking about a real sense of joy, a real sense of a heart that is light, that is happy, even in difficult times. I think of the 3 very significant times that I was privileged to have as part of the Association for Global New Thought, when we created and conducted 3 synthesis dialogues with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And at each of those dialogues, in part, was bringing together world leaders and thought leaders from around the world, all different backgrounds, all different nationalities, all different races, to talk about issues in the world, big, heavy issues, same issues for the most part that we're still facing today. And in addition, to try to have a brain trust and a heart trust in that room when we talked to His Holiness and listened to him, to try to help with the situation between Tibet and China. And one of the things that I was so struck with is, even when we talked about really serious things, His Holiness had such an energy of joy in his heart. And I think, we talk about being enlightened. I think this is an aspect of it. It wasn't ever that he did not understand in a first-hand way the seriousness of some of the issues that we talked about, but he could also bring a cheerful heart into the dialogues, which lifted everybody up in such a way that I think we could access wisdom that was more powerful and more helpful. A lightness that allowed us to go deep and find the reservoir of faith, the reservoir of insight, the reservoir of hope. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Cheerful heart, to me, really represents that quality of inner joy that is not dependent upon circumstance. That is not dependent upon circumstance. If our joy is dependent on circumstance, we're going to have a very haphazard experience of joy, right? Because have you noticed how circumstances change a lot? Have you noticed that sometimes circumstances are really awful, right? But there is, with spiritual practice, the ability to anchor into and to bring up a cheerful heart in the midst of the serious stuff we're talking about. It conveys as well, or carries, this proverb carries with it as well, the healing power of joyfulness, the mind-body connection, if you will. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Unity was founded on the heels of Myrtle Fillmore's physical healing, in which she spoke affirmative, life-giving, uplifting, joyful-based words to her body. She had been taught to think of herself from childhood on as weak and frail and likely to inherit disease, which in fact she did, and that she would probably never be a very strong individual. And yet in her 40s, when she was given a diagnosis of tuberculosis and given 2 years to live, she heard an idea that was different than any idea she had ever heard before about the connection of the mind and the body, and about this idea that she could do something about this thought that she had been raised with, to think of herself as weak and frail. And that idea that she heard put her on a path in which she started to speak and act in a more joyful and loving way toward her body. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Her cheerful heart, her connecting with the presence and power of Spirit in every cell in her body, healed her of her tuberculosis. And instead of dying in her mid-40s, she lived to be 86 years old. A mind-body connection. Charles Fillmore used to say that the body is a slowed down version of, is a slowed down version of thought. The body, the slowed down version of thought. A cheerful heart is good medicine. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. When you think of a crushed spirit, what do you think of? What does it look like? Depressing. Defeated. Yeah, defeated. Negative, right? Critical. Think of when you have felt crushed. What has caused you to feel crushed? The negativity, right? The difficulty, the weight, the challenge, the lack of belief that there's a way through. And yet, as people of faith, as people of spiritual practice, we do know there's a way through. If not through, then over. If not over, then under. If not over, then around. But there is a way to the other side. This proverb reminds us, I think, of the creative and the healing power of joy. And I think that in applying this or in looking at this for our own lives, it's important maybe to check in from time to time and ask ourselves, how are we doing with this? You know, are we consuming literature or music or enjoying friendships that are uplifting, that help us to feel that experience of joy? Are we doing what's within our power to increase the joy in our life? And if we're not, then guess what? It's as simple as making a different choice. Making a different choice. And the third proverb that I like: whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. When I think of walk in this context, I think of walking as symbolizing our spiritual path. As symbolizing our spiritual path. And on our spiritual path, we can take this at least two different levels. We can take it at kind of the literal level. Who are we walking with on our spiritual path? Are we walking with folks that are of similar mind and similar heart that can buoy us up and strengthen us when we are feeling defeated or when we are feeling worried or afraid? I think that we all need spiritual companionship. We all need at least one or two other people that can believe in us and believe in spiritual principle and help us when we are dealing with the tough stuff. A health diagnosis, a financial challenge, the loss of a loved one. I was in a couple of phone calls this week with a former member of our church who moved away to Northern California, and they just lost their adult daughter to an overdose. Daughter had been challenged with drug addiction off and on for years. And this former member reached out to me because even though they are connected with a new community where they live, that new community doesn't have the same spiritual depth. The people are great, but the community, the teaching doesn't have the same spiritual depth that this person desperately needed to be able to walk through this challenge, to walk through the pain of this difficulty. So I think this proverb works on two levels. It works on the level of our spiritual journey and path Do we have those people of like mind and heart that can lift us up and encourage us on? And if we don't, heck, this is a place to find them. Look around. Look to either side of you. Look around. Go ahead. Nobody will bite you, I promise. And especially at the person that you didn't come with, okay? The person you didn't come with. We are those people. Doesn't make us better than, but we are those people. We should never be without that kind of companionship because it's so easy to have and to cultivate here. I am not suggesting isolating at all from the rest of the world. I think we need to pollinate the rest of the world. Not isolate from it. We need to pollinate it. But in order to be good pollinators, boy, is this an interesting path I'm on right now. In order to be good pollinators, I think we need to have those of like mind that can help us remember the teachings when it's hard. So we need the people, but it's also what's going on in our minds. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. It also has to do with the level of our thinking. What are the thoughts we are allowing to stay in our minds and rehearsing over and over and over? Are they the kinds of thoughts that are wisdom thoughts, or are they the kinds of thoughts that are foolish thoughts? And I would put under the category of foolish thoughts the many lies and myths we have believed about ourselves and about life. Many of us are still trying to heal from messaging that said that somehow who we are and how we are is not okay. I mean, heck, why do we even need to have or want to have an exhibit for the LGBTQ plus community if we thought there was any sort of problem or difficulty or wrongness with a person's sexual orientation? Right? We wouldn't need it. We wouldn't need it or any of the other kinds of things that we gather around to try to heal racism, or we can go on and on and on with it, right? If we really, really, really got who and what we are from the inside out. And so this proverb, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm, is also inviting us not just with who we walk with in friendship and in life, but what are the thoughts we are holding in our minds? Are we still wrestling with and dealing with individual personal thoughts of somehow not being good enough? We need to heal that. We need to heal that for ourselves, but we also need to heal it for the rest of humanity so that we can be that light and walk this path and lift each other up. Fools symbolize our error thoughts and limited beliefs that are out of alignment with spiritual truth. A good exercise could be just to identify for yourself what are some of the limiting beliefs that you might still be holding on to, because they will stand in your way. They will stand in your way, and they will cause you to feel separate from God, separate from spiritual truth, separate from the divine. Take a deep breath with me. I shared with you just 3 proverbs that I really like. I could have shared with you many others. You can find lots of them, whether in our book of Proverbs or just Google Proverbs. To make this more real, to make this more helpful for whatever it is that you are dealing with in your life, it can be beneficial to pick 1 or 2 of the ones I shared with you or ones you like and really commit them to memory and really work them on a daily basis so that that becomes your anchor. That becomes the way you move forward in your life. That's how we make these teachings practical. We come together to learn and remember together, and then we go outside to practice it and test it in the laboratory of our lives. Namaste.